It's your daily dose of Donna. Happy Saturday. And I know I don't usually release a Saturday podcast, but this is a special episode. I have been looking forward to speaking to Jonah Platt for some time. Jonah Platt is a podcast host, but he hasn't always been a podcast host. He currently is a podcast host of the podcast Being Jewish with Jonah Platt. And you may recognize his name because he comes from a very famous family, the Platt family. He comes from a family of actors and producers, but as he describes it, he is half Jewish advocates. One side is Jewish advocacy and one side is entertainment. He was on Broadway 10 years ago. He played the role of Fiyero from Wicked, and he has been an actor and a theater guy since then. He's had his hands in writing and so many things, but he also grew up with a lot of Jewish ties, and he went to Jewish sleepaway camp. Reminds me a lot of my own kids and their lives. But October 7th, 2023, almost 500 days ago, obviously, if you are Jewish or even if you're not, your life just kind of got rocked by what went down. And that's how I discovered Jonah. He was a very, very strong, solid person on Instagram. And that's how he kind of came into my perspective. He was being shared. People would share his content. I started following him. And at a time when it felt very lonely and very scary to be Jewish, he was speaking a message of hope and positivity. A lot of people were scared to be Jewish, right? This is a time where people were saying, maybe we want to hide our Jewishness, right? Maybe we want to hide our Stars of David, our Magen Davids. Maybe we want to take the mezuzahs off our door. Maybe we want to not tell people in the streets that we're Jewish. And yet Jonah decided, no, I want to start a podcast saying being Jewish. And since then, Jonah has, I think it's, he's been doing, I don't remember exactly how many shows he's been doing, but he has interviewed incredible people, Jewish people and non-Jewish people. In fact, he said a lot of his audience is not Jewish. And I love that because he is speaking to anyone who is just interested in what it's like to be Jewish and the experience. So Jewish people and allies of. He had Van Jones on his show recently. He speaks to Patricia Heaton, so many amazing, amazing people just about the experience. And I love talking to him because he's also married to a former dancer from So You Think You Can Dance. And that's actually how we kind of connected. We talk about it a little bit at the beginning of the episode. His wife was the partner of Twitch, who passed away recently. And we were speaking about her on Daily Dose of Donna when Twitch's wife, Allison, was talking about it. And, his wife, Courtney, was saying, like, I don't like how she is speaking about him after he passed away. And that's how this kind of went down. So Daily Dose of Donna brings all the Jews to the yard is like how I like to say it. Anyway, I thought this was going to be a really cool way for any of you that either are Jewish or not Jewish to just kind of hear a little bit more about it. Jonah's an awesome, cool guy to know. So here is Jonah Platt. Make sure to follow him everywhere. He releases his episodes on Tuesday. And let me know in the comments below what you guys think. I will see you on Monday. Have a great weekend. Bye. Jonah, thank you so much for being here on Daily Dose of Donna. This is such a treat.
It's a treat for me. I'm psyched to be with the woman who hyped up my wife so much on a recent episode. It's like my pleasure to be here.
Well, it was kind of a full circle moment because I talk about all kinds of like pop culture stuff and big stories. And of course, everything around the Twitch story was like a big story for my show.
Yeah.
And I'm like a little secret conspiracy theorist. I love a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
And so I'm convinced that like crazy stuff always happens, but we don't have to get into that today. That's for another show.
Okay.
But
I'm on your time.
Okay, let's talk about Diddy. Okay, so
you and Courtney would get along. She fell asleep
really?
to her like 9th Diddy documentary last night.
Oh my God. Well, yeah. How much time do we have? And how much baby oil do we have?
Right. Well, that's the important question.
So, but Courtney is your wife.
She
And I
is.
didn't know this because I've been following you and we're going to get into it. You have an amazing podcast called Being Jewish with Jonah Platt.
Thank you.
And it's so weird. It's like they say 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, but I think, just growing up here in LA, like we have so many mutual people. And honestly, being Jewish, I feel like we all kind of know each other in a weird, strange way.
Not that many of us.
Really, seriously, you're definitely my brother
Right,
in some
exactly.
weird way.
Yeah, not too many generations ago.
Exactly. So when the story came up and someone had sent me Courtney's, so the story basically was that Allison was doing this people cover story and she was talking about Twitch's drug use from when he was still alive and she had found all these drugs. And the first thing people had sent me was your wife Courtney's Instagram post. And I was like, Courtney, oh my God, from So You Think You Can Dance. I wasn't following her.
Mm-hmm.
I go to her page and I'm like, wait, what? She's married to Jonah, who I follow from Being Jewish? This was like a crazy full circle thing for me. So Courtney was on what seasons of So You Think You Can Dance?
Season 4 was her debut, the one she did with Twitch, where they were finalists. And then then she came back 7 and 10, I think, as an all-star.
That was that was like the heyday. That was the best.
Yeah.
I remember where I was watching that season.
That was sort of the peak season for that show. That was when everybody was paying attention, except for me. I mean, I met Courtney way after So You Think. I never watched the show. I didn't know about her at all until we met doing something totally different, a long time later.
But you were in the industry. I mean, you're definitely in the musical theater acting industry.
Yes, we met doing a show together. We met doing the one stage musical she's ever done, which was Hair, the musical. We did it at the Hollywood Bowl together. She was part of a big crew of dancers who had come from the TV world, and I was one of the principals. And that's how we met, little showmance.
Well, I mean, we're going to jump around here a little bit because that's my brain and that's how it works. And people that listen to my show are they've already taken their ADHD meds. They're ready. But
so have I.
But I have to say, when I Googled you, the first thing that came up was Fiyero, Wicked. And I was like, oh, okay. So obviously this is like such a year for Wicked.
Yeah.
Are people just like so excited about that fact? You were on Broadway.
I was. And this summer, it'll have been 10 years since I did it on Broadway, which is crazy.
Okay, that was 2015 that you did it. You were on in that show for 1 year?
Yeah, I did it from like summer of 15 to summer of 16.
And was that your only Broadway show or have you done multiple?
My only Broadway show to date.
And tell me like what it really is like doing a Broadway show.
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, being a part of any show is a dream come true for somebody who's trying to do that with their lives. But getting to be a part of Wicked, especially, which is such a quality show, which you don't always get to be in, and B is so beloved by so many people. It was just really special. I mean, the way the fans come again and again and are so devoted to it and how it moves people emotionally so much. You just, those, you don't get those every day. So that was super special to be in. It's pretty grueling schedule, to be honest. I mean, you're definitely in sort of an athlete in-season mindset where you have to take care of yourself. You're doing these 8 shows a week. And during the holidays, it's like the most insane time. You're doing like 10 a week. And that's like, it gets very crazy and grueling. And your schedule is the opposite of normal people's. So you're free during the day on weekdays and then busy at nights and weekends. So you
oh my God.
It's very hard to see other people unless they're very accommodating of your odd schedule. But it's all the name of the game, and all the Broadway folks, hang together, and it was a dream come true. It was just a blast.
But you grew up here in LA.
Yes,
and
born and raised.
You come from a family of entertainment. Like you're surrounded by it.
I'm half entertainment, half Jewish philanthropy, like amazingness. So it's like it sort of makes sense where I've ended up. It's like a little of both.
You mean
of my parents.
your mom and dad, basically?
Yeah, basically.
So your mom's side is Jewish philanthropy.
Yeah.
And dad is the entertainment.
Although I mean, not just my dad personally. Like his dad worked in shoes, and his brother's a dentist, and his sister works in the Jewish philanthropic world. So really, he's the outlier. Interestingly enough.
But you grew up going to a Jewish school, you just said to me off
I
camera.
did. Yes.
And so you were obviously had, like, I talk about being Jewish all the time on my show. That's like kind of a big, like, people that watch my show always know that that's like a huge part of my life. And it's definitely taken a turn like this last couple years.
Yeah.
It's never thought that it was going to become such a controversial issue.
Shouldn't be.
No, it really shouldn't be, but it became a controversial issue. And growing up here in LA, I'm sure you had the same experience. Like, it was so normal, like so normal to be Jewish. We were surrounded by it.
Yeah, absolutely. What's interesting, I was just reading this book by Dara Horn, who is a brilliant Jewish writer, sort of, on my Mount Rushmore of contemporary Jewish thinkers. And the way she framed it, which I think is actually right and interesting, is that the time we lived through and grew up in was actually the abnormal time, because every other time in history, it's been more like this that we're feeling right now. And we got this abnormal pocket of a couple decades where things were chill.
Oh, wow.
And it's sort of sad and, scary to think of it in those terms, but it's historically accurate. So we lived through a little kind of aberration where we were kind of skating through, and then we've now returned to the everybody hate the Jews vibe that has generally been going on for centuries.
It's interesting. Do you think that that's like, this is probably such a bigger question, but I wonder, because I was listening to someone talking about that with like, with racism or with like other minorities as well, that it kind of ebbs and flows. It goes forward and then goes backwards and goes forward and goes backwards. Like, I wonder if that's always going to be the case with just in general with these kinds of things, where it kind of you move forward and then you go back and you move forward and back. And like, is there ever really progression when it comes to these things, or does it always kind of go back?
I think everybody's different. I think it's hard to sort of lump all ethnic minorities into one group for that particular question, because it's also like, where are we talking about? The way that, to pick a random one, like Asians are treated in Asia is very different than the way they're treated let's say, in the US. Whereas with Jews, aside from Israel, they're sort of all sort of seen the same way wherever they are. And I would argue, there's been great progress, let's say, with the Black community in America. I mean, look where they started and look where they are now. It's impossible not to call that progress. Obviously, there's still work to do.
Absolutely.
And racism has not been eliminated. But I think it's different than anti-Jewish hate, which has been around for so many centuries. And just keeps finding ways to stick around.
Yeah. And comes out in secretive ways, like in strange ways. Like it's almost what I've noticed, and I guess this is what you said is so interesting, that we were born in like this kind of happy time. It's almost like we were not aware of it, and we were just living this like la 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 life, and now we're seeing what our grandparents kind of had to experience in a different way, thank God.
Yes.
But in a similar-ish way. And our kids, how old are your kids?
6 and 2 today.
Oh, happy birthday.
Yeah.
Boy, girl?
Boy, then girl.
Oh,
and a third on the way, having another girl. And luck had nothing to do with it, because my daughter was made in a dish and we picked her.
Your third?
Well, second and third.
You picked the second and third in a dish.
We picked second and third. The second was IVF, we selected girl. She was the best of the bunch. And then for the third one, we did IVF and are using a surrogate, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So why? Do you mind me asking? Are you open about that journey?
It's fine. It's actually because Courtney has multiple sclerosis.
That's right.
Yeah, and she's doing great with it. Like, you would never know it to look at her. Only I would know it. But it's just the entire process of pregnancy is really hard on her body. And she has to come off all of her MS meds to try to even begin to try to get pregnant. And all the way through post-pregnancy, she has to be off it. So it's a really long period of time for her to just feel terrible. And
No, it
she
makes
put
sense.
herself through it twice, and she's like, I can't do it again. We got to figure something else out.
It makes sense. It
Yeah.
totally makes sense. And that's so cool that you were able to find someone wonderful and you're going through
Amazing.
it. And are you like deep into it?
Yeah. The baby's coming end of May.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So now I want to have a third so I can pick it.
Right.
I want to pick
Amazing.
a girl
Pretty sweet.
because I have 2 boys.
Right. My family had 6 grandsons. And then we chose my daughter, and she became the first girl after 6 boys. Now there's a 7th boy. So right now it's 7 boys and 1 girl. And so we had to give her a sister to chill with. So
Okay, your daughter, your current daughter, your 2-year-old,
yeah,
is probably the queen of the
yeah.
family.
Everybody's obsessed with her, but she deserves it because she's like the cutest, sweetest human I've ever met.
And you're not biased at all.
If you met her, you'd be like, "Oh my God, you're the sweetest, cutest person I've ever met." I'm telling you, she's special. She really is
There's
special.
something there.
Her face. She just has a very beautiful face and
Aw.
beautiful spirit and disposition.
That's so sweet. That's awesome. So, okay, wait. So we were talking about, let me go back. What were we talking about before we talked about kids?
Well, we were on day school. We were on.
We were talking about Judaism.
Judaism, yeah.
Wait, no, but we were saying that our kids are born into this, and you have younger
Right.
kids than me.
Right.
My kids are 9 and 12, and my 12-year-old is like a little mini rabbi, right? So he is having his bar mitzvah this year, and
Mazel tov.
it's actually theater themed. It's Broadway
Amazing.
themed.
So was mine.
No, stop.
Yeah, mine was like the table. I think the table centerpieces were either the names of the plays that I had done or the parts that I had done, but it was one of those two. I forget.
Oh, his is all the theater. He has a Wicked one. He had like we already got all the decor. It's like I'm about to maybe hire you to come and perform. Don't worry, like the offer's in the mail. Truly,
You know where to find me.
No, seriously, like what's your rate? And actually, like I'm a former casting director, so I used to work in this world too. And a lot of my former, like the kids I used to hire for Disney, I used to work in Disney, like for Disney casting. Went on to do Broadway, and I'm like literally in their DMs, like, so can we put together something? Like, I want to surprise him to do a big show.
Oh, amazing.
But anyway, so he's doing a theater show, but he is obsessed with Jewish history and Jewish like culture. And we went to Israel in 2023, right before October 7th, and so he was able to be there and stuff. But he's going to have this, like, this is going to be his memory of Judaism or being Jewish as the beginning of his life, like how hard it was and how scary and how he felt like he had to hide his Magen David and all of that. And so I just hope for his sake that it gets only better, you know? Like for us, I'm okay with it getting worse for us, but for their kids, I want it to get better.
I think one of the important steps for it getting better is taking that Magen David back out and wearing it proudly. And we've never done that throughout history. Jews have always been like, keep your head down and try to blend in, and it doesn't work. It's not. We're not turning anybody off. So I think what we should be trying is everybody be proud and tall and demonstrate, courage and self-respect. And that's not the person the bully goes after. The bully goes after the person who's afraid, not the person who's courageous. And I think that's a really important step.
So what were you doing in your life on October 7th when all of this went down?
So I had been entertainment all the way from the moment I graduated college. I mean, really since I was a kid. So I was, and I've, as I sort of mentioned, I have ADHD. So I was always doing like 10 different things.
Welcome to the club.
Right. So I, auditioning for stuff, for stage, for TV, for voiceover, writing stuff. I'm writing a musical. That's actually still happening. Adapting a book called The Giver. Been working on that for a long time.
Wait, like the book, The Giver?
The book, The Giver, yeah.
That's very cool. Do you have some sort of rights over the book?
We sure do.
Are you going to sue someone for sexual harassment and be like with Ryan Reynolds, and it's going to be like all over the,
No,
like,
we're going to sidestep that part.
Okay.
And, we're going to go.
Because I was hoping that maybe I could cover it on my show at some point.
I'll find some scandal to kick your way. Yeah.
Promise?
Deal. Promise.
Okay, good.
So
That's so exciting.
Yeah, it's cool. So working on that, and Yeah, no, it's like I've written in TV and stuff, so like always was like kicking kind of projects around, and there's a movie I'm producing, and that was still in development. And then
So
October 7th
constantly
happened.
busy.
Constantly busy, and then October 7th happened, and I've like really like narrowed my focus in a very healthy and productive way. And now my main bread and butter way I spend my time is my podcast and Jewish advocacy.
So what made you do that? What stopped you after that day and said, like, hold on with all these other projects? Not like you're not working on them, you're still working on them, but what made you say, like, I need to speak out and I need to like make a difference here for people?
I mean, it honestly wasn't even a thought. I mean, it just was like as natural a reaction to me as breathing. It's like this moment is happening and I'm going to meet the moment. What the moment requires is us to stand up and be loud. And I was already doing sort of Jewish advocacy and education online, and I just literally there's a Mark Cuban quote I think about that says, "Don't follow your dreams, follow your effort."
Mm,
And I just my effort, I kept wanting to be spending time doing that. And like I'd have an audition and I'd be like, I don't want to do that audition. I want to be online, comforting people and educating people and engaging with people and consuming information about what's going on and all of that stuff. So it just was, there was no, like, there wasn't a moment where I made a choice. Like, there was no choice. I was just doing what felt natural instantly all the way. The time where an actual sort of choice was made was when I started the podcast, which was
okay.
actually a big choice, where, inside I was sort of fighting with the like macro idea of, is it okay to pivot away from entertainment as my day in day out all day long focus to do this other thing? Does that make me a quitter? Does it mean that I'm giving up? Does it mean I'm not reaching my potential? I had to sort of deal with all of that. And funny enough, is actually I got diagnosed with ADHD at that time. I'd
Mm,
lived my whole life sort of thinking I'd had it, but had never really dealt with it or understood it. And once I understood it, I realized a lot of those thoughts and worries actually came with ADHD.
mhm,
And once I was able to see that, I was like, oh, I don't actually have to worry about that or listen to
mm-mm.
that. And I've done well for myself. And if this is where my heart wants to be, it's okay to be there.
Yeah. Starting this podcast for me too, I had the same fears because I always felt like, does that mean I'm failing at my other business?
Yeah.
And in reality, it was just like an extension, almost like just an evolving. It's an
Mm-hmm.
evolving. And honestly, it's like, you're never going to do well at anything you do unless you're passionate about it. You are clearly so passionate about, Jewish advocacy, and so glad that you started that podcast because so many of, it's funny. I have to shout out, he will die. He will fall over my friend, Adam Newman. He is a friend who I met when I went to Israel when I was 16 years old. I went on LA Ulpan. It was like 120 kids from all around LA. I never went to Jewish school. I never went to Hebrew school. I went to like the Beverly Hills School District. Did not have a bat mitzvah because I have an Israeli family, so like we didn't get bat mitzvah here in LA. A lot of times like it's weird. It's like Jewish Americans got bar mitzvah and bat mitzvah, but Israeli American girls didn't.
That's
And
interesting.
it was weird. Now they do. Like all my kids' friends that are Israeli,
Mm.
they do, but back maybe just like my family was over it. I don't know what happened. But I just didn't know a lot about like Hebrew or like Jewish history. And but I wanted to like go for the social aspect.
Sure.
Anyway, I met some of my best friends, and my friend Adam
Amazing.
Newman, I was texting with him yesterday and I was like, "You're going to die. Guess who I'm interviewing tomorrow? Jonah Platt." And he's like, "Shut up. Is there a way I can be on the interview? Is there a way I can be there?" Like what?
Aw.
So I'm shouting out Adam Newman. Like he's a huge fan of yours. He loves your podcast. He just like really, really appreciates your message because obviously this hit so many people so hard, that we're just like blown away not only by what happened on October 7th, but I think a lot of us were shocked by the world's response to October 7th.
Of course.
Knowing that like we kind of thought everyone really kind of would have our back
Yeah.
and didn't immediately on October 8th,
Yeah.
didn't.
Yep.
Before there was a reason not to, right?
Right.
Like it was way
A
before.
reason. I'm putting quotes if you're
There you
listening.
go.
Yeah.
There you go. I'll never forget, and I tell this story all the time to anyone that wants to listen. I try not to talk about it on my daily show because I
Sure.
realize it's not really like apropos.
Right.
But the day of October 7th, there's a Real Housewives husband on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Do you watch any of those shows?
I don't.
Does your wife?
She dabbles. I know my sisters definitely watch some of it, and I watched this show called Traitors that some of these housewives are now
Are
appearing
you watching
on.
right now?
I'm behind. I watched the
behind.
first couple of season 3, but I'm not caught up.
But like we can make fun of Tom Sandoval together a little bit. No, I'm just joking. Like
Which one is Tom Sandoval?
He's from Scandival, from like the Vanderpump Rules. He's like the
that guy. Yeah.
He's got the sweaty pits.
He's like creepy looking guy.
And always in a kilt.
Yeah.
Like he needs to chill. But on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, there is Dorit and PK. They're a couple on Real Housewives, and she's Israeli and he's Jewish, British, Jewish, and he wrote on his stories on October 7th. I remember seeing it. He said something like praying for Israel, fight back against those terrorists, something like that. And I remember that there was another person in my community, like in the content creator Bravo community, who reposted the story and said, I really hope Israel doesn't fight back and like kill people for this. Like something already, it was on October 7th. Already they were already vilifying Israel. And I remember saying like, wait, what? Like already and I couldn't believe like it was the day of and we were already being told not to fight back.
That's crazy.
It was crazy. It sticks with me.
Yeah.
Because I didn't think it was even a thought process that we were told already, sit down, sit and take it.
Yeah, I guess, people who are not close to it, like just their mental connection to Israel is so thin and limited. And all they know is that like, oh, Israel fights with Gaza a lot. So all they hear is like, oh, I hope there's not another big fight that goes on.
Yeah.
But like, that's, they don't have the depth of understanding to be able to comment in any intelligent or meaningful way on the subject.
That's another thing is like we found a lot of people that have never even been even close to Israel or Gaza. I've never been to Gaza, but I've been to Israel multiple times, but have never even been in that region. But all of a sudden are geniuses. Like it's like the fires, like how many fire science experts were like, or like right now with the Baldoni and Blake Lively case, like we have so many legal experts. I am one of them, but still like people just immediately took over and there were foreign experts on the case.
It's a lot of sort of, I don't know what to call it, like TikTok era arrogance, where you feel like, oh, I watched a couple videos, I'm an expert. It's definitely in a way specific to the Jews. I know you gave some other examples, and I wouldn't say exclusive to the Jews, but as David Baddiel writes in his book, this is another great book called "Jews Don't Count." Often Jews don't count. So like what you would never do for any other group, it's okay to do for Jews because Jews don't count.
And they say a lot of times, no Jews, no news.
What does that mean?
Like if there's like, for example, when there was like very strong stories of like huge amounts of people being killed in other wars.
Right.
You don't hear about like protests on campuses. You don't see a lot of people like crying about it in front of, going into Capitol buildings, like with, scarves around them, like crying and like shouting, it's only when it comes to this story.
Yeah. A friend of mine reached out to me yesterday and she was telling me that Russia has kidnapped about 20,000 Ukrainian children.
Oh my God.
And I was like, yeah, first I'm hearing about it.
Never saw anything about it in the news.
Nothing. Yeah.
And even if it was front page news, would anyone be out in the streets?
Right. Nobody would care.
Nobody would care. It feels very personal, and it's like hard not to see the pattern. And then when we call it out, we're told, no, you're being sensitive. It's not real. That's not anti-Semitic. That's not against Jews.
Yeah.
It's just, again, that's another thing that got so it was I hate using the word because it feels annoying, gaslighting, but it really was gaslighting. Oh yeah,
constantly. Big time.
So how were you dealing with this constantly? When did you start the podcast?
October 1st.
Of 2024.
Of 2024, yes.
So for that entire year, you're just talking on Instagram. You're just talking on lives. You're just like communicating. Are you going to things? Are you speaking in person to people?
Yes. So I'm doing all of the above. So I'm doing a lot of stuff online, especially right after October 7th. I'm doing Q&As, like 2-hour Instagram Q&As, Instagram lives, all that stuff, making a lot of videos, just explainers, commenting on a lot of stuff, reposting and amplifying a lot of other people, and trying to do stuff in real life too, like lots of get-togethers, going to meetings with hostage families, speaking at conferences and summits and private dinners and all of that stuff. And then around like January, February of 24 is when I was like, all right, I think I want to do this podcast and sort of expand on what I'm doing online and bring in a couple other dimensions to sort of my Jewish advocacy mission that the podcast accomplishes. And then I had to learn how to make a podcast and surround myself with people who were going to allow me to make it sustainable. And I did that very meticulously, and that took like 6, 7, 8 months.
Wow.
And then, because I wanted to be able to just like press the button and have an amazing product come out on day one. And I think we achieved that goal. And
That's not ADHD like.
Right, not at all.
No, because I just came home and record.
Oh,
like, I just go.
I'm being sarcastic. To me, that's like the epitome of my ADHD is that like,
really?
Every single element of everything to me is important. So this is a cool thing I learned about ADHD. ADHD brains don't use the same kind of hierarchical thinking as non-ADHD brains, meaning non-ADHD brains, when they take in information, will sort of automatically say what's more important and like make a ladder.
Okay.
ADHD brains, everything is of equal importance.
Sure.
So for me, like when it comes to like putting this show together, like the shade of blue in this corner of this graphic is as important to me as like what's the title of the podcast.
Okay.
So like it's mostly a blessing. I mean, it's why the things that I've been fortunate to do in my life I've done them pretty well because I put out so much.
So you're like
care.
a little bit of a perfectionist then.
A little bit, yes, but it's not like it doesn't come from a place of like this has to be perfect. It comes from just like I notice all of these details, and it's like how could I not notice them, and why would that not be worth addressing? And so now I'm getting to the point where I have to tell myself a little of like that part shouldn't be as important. You can let that one go. And so
I think I have the other kind of ADHD.
Yeah, well, everybody's different.
I have the kind of ADHD where I'm like, well, let's see if it works. Record.
Yeah.
And then just put it out there.
Well, here you are.
Well, I go live on YouTube 5 days a week. And
God.
today I went live and it's like, it used to be 100 people live. And today there was 5,500 people live. So like,
how cool.
It's just, no. And then I'm just like, wow, whatever I say is out there now. So like, I don't have time to second guess. And I just have to, like, it's weird. It's like it's improv. It's an hour of improv because I don't script anything.
Wow.
I just have notes. I just like have fun.
That sounds like way less work than what I'm doing. I got to take a page out of your playbook.
Except for the fact that this is next. And this is my question for you, because let's talk about the backside of this. And there's no way you're not getting the negative. You have to be. If you're
like
Jewish
negative,
and you're speaking, you have to be getting people saying, don't tell me you're not. I'll be pissed. Then I'm going to say it's against women.
No, so I get some stuff, but honestly, I don't get a lot really. Or if I do, well, maybe I have in the past. I like block people instantly. So I'm definitely culling them out. But, I'll get comments on clips from my show, but they're generally more addressed to my guest and not to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, my clips tend to highlight my guests.
So do you put your clips on TikTok, YouTube, everywhere?
Yeah, they're everywhere.
And your show is also full episodes on YouTube?
Yes, we just started splitting them up. So like through episode like 18, they're all one big file. Now we're separating my opening monologue and the interview into separate chunks.
Okay.
As we were advised to by a YouTube consultant. We'll see how that goes.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't get a ton of hate. Yeah, it really depends. If there's the clips that get the most heat there's one about tattoos that gets a lot, about Jews with tattoos. That's more like Jewish hate, like from the Jews, really.
That's
But like,
from current Jews, like actual
yeah,
Jews saying you
yeah.
shouldn't get tattoos.
People like being pissed and being obnoxious. But then I have like three that are basically about Israel. There's like one from Patricia Heaton, one from Rabbi David Wolpe, and then one that's Van Jones talking about the pro-Palestine movement.
Okay,
And
so I was gonna say, I think the stuff that would really get the hate is anytime you talk about Israel,
yes,
specifically.
yeah.
Anytime you talk about Israel or Gaza, yes, and then yeah, I guess not talking about Judaism necessarily would bring on hate.
Yeah, they're not really paying so much attention to that, I guess. Like it's not drawing in the haters so much. I get my fair share of here's a video about, matzo ball soup and I get free Palestine. It's like, all right. But
You could talk about, you could talk, I wonder if you talked about like, we were mentioning earlier Candace Owens and like her thoughts and stuff. Then you would get a lot of engagement.
That's right. But I don't want to give her any oxygen.
Well, so let me ask you a question. Do you ever try to go on your show? Do you keep it very, very tame on purpose? Or do you try to get like, how Joe Rogan tries to get those numbers because he's like, he goes there. Right. Do you ever try to go there with your content or do you want it? What's your goal on your show?
Yeah. So the one baseline, at least up until this point, and I'll probably continue with it unless I did like a special one-off episode. The baseline for all my guests is that they are supportive of Jews and Israel. If you want a show where I'm going to like fight an anti-Israel hater, that's like, it's a different show. That's not this show.
No.
And because there are other places and people who do that already, and I don't know that there's another place doing exactly what I'm doing, which is sort of trying to create community. And I do like to go there with guests in the sense that I want them to be really honest and vulnerable and raw. And I've had many guests cry on the show because we get real. And so like, that's what I want. But to get there, actually, I have to do the opposite of, doing something incendiary. I have to create a really safe and inclusive and welcoming environment so that these people feel safe opening up to me and knowing that this is a place where what they have to say is not going to be judged or pushed back. I'm not trying to catch them in anything. And it's been a good formula so far.
Do you sing as Tevye?
I don't sing as Tevye, but Josh Gad spoke about playing Tevye and how that made him start liking being Jewish when he was a kid.
When I was in high school, in ninth grade, I think it was in ninth grade, my first year at Beverly, I was in the stage crew of Fiddler on the Roof. And it was like a life-changing experience. I was like, I would just sing Matchmaker all day. Like I was like, Fiddler on the Roof is like, I want to be Jewish all the time. Like it does make you, and then you watch it like as an adult and you're like, this is not Jewish. Like, what is this? Like,
I love Fiddler on the Roof.
I love it too.
It holds
but
up amazing.
It's so good, but it's not like my experience in any way.
It's 1800s or Russia.
I know.
Here, you want to talk Jewish? I played Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof in Hebrew.
Stop.
At my Jewish sleepaway camp.
Where did you go to sleepaway camp?
It's called Camp Ramah, and they have.
Of course I know Ramah.
Yeah, they have a bunch. I went to the one in California, in Ojai, just north of LA. Yeah.
My kids go to another one. I'm not going to name it, but they go to another one, and they go for like 3 weeks here in the summer, and I love it for them. I think it's the best experience you can ever go to. I love that they can sing. My little blonde boys can sing in their Hebrew songs. I mean, and it's amazing. So if you don't mind me asking, is Courtney Jewish?
She converted before we got married.
Okay, because my husband's not Jewish. So this is such an interesting conversation. So did you want her to convert or did she choose to?
I asked her on our first date if we got married, would she be open to converting?
Is that because that was necessary for you?
It was very important to me. And I was also, Courtney and I were very serious from like the second we got together. So I had a feeling it was going to go all the way. So I wanted to bring it up right away.
Very serious. Like, were you did you propose?
I mean, I told her I loved her on our first date.
Excuse me.
And told her, that if we went all the way, would she be open to converting to Judaism on the first date? Because
you had already known her for a while before you
I'd already known her from doing the show. What's creepy about telling someone you love them? It was great. She said it back.
Thank God.
Yeah. So
That would have been bad.
we just sort of knew right away that there was something different. I mean, we both had a number of serious relationships in our adult lives, and there was something special that we both could tell right away.
Also, for those of you that are listening and don't know a lot about Judaism, it really technically, how it works in our religion is like the traditional thing is that it does pass down through the mother. And I'm sure for you, it was important that the mother of your children is Jewish.
Yeah. Even beyond that, look, I don't care about certain traditions like that. Like I'm a big
That wouldn't matter to you?
not that aspect of it that all of it matters. Like I want her to be a Jew more than like, well, my kids won't be Jewish because of this technical law that if you're not Jewish, they won't be Jewish. It was more like Judaism is such an important part of who I am and my daily life and my family. It's like, this is who I am.
It would be wild not to be.
It would be wild for you not to be a Jew. I just don't know. We could never be as intimate as a couple as I would want us to be if we weren't of the same tribe.
No, 100%. I totally get it. If it's part of your life in such a strong way. So did you grow up having Shabbat dinner every Friday?
I did. Yes. We would have Shabbat dinner every Friday.
Going to temple on high holidays only or all the time?
Not all the time, but I'd say more than high holidays. So we would go on the high holidays. We had so many, my family is huge, cousins, aunts, and uncles. So many bar and bat mitzvahs where we're going to synagogue for that or some special something. It's not like we went like every Saturday, but every once in a while that wasn't a holiday or something, we would go for whatever reason. And I do want to just add to Courtney's credit, when I asked her about it, she said basically, how you just said, it's like such an important part of my life. And she was like, I need to see that it's an important part of your life and that this isn't like, oh, my parents said I have to marry a Jew or whatever. She said, that's why I phrased my question. I was like, would you be open to talking about converting if we went all the way? And she said, if at that point I've seen that like this is about you and how important that is to you, yes, I would be open to discussing it. And she very quickly saw.
What would you do if you asked her that and she said, actually, and she pulled out her papers and she's like, I already did because I had a feeling that you were going to ask. You would say that's creepy.
No, then I would have proposed to her probably right there.
Okay. Because I would have thought that was creepy, but I'm just saying.
I proposed only like 10 months after that anyways. So it was pretty quick.
And she has family as well that like was open to this and everything.
Yeah. As with any change or something like this in life, there were some bumps, but her family's amazing and super understanding and welcoming. They're all, Italian-American Catholic, a lot of similarities with Jewish, way of life. And it's part of what she and I connected over is it felt very familiar in a lot of ways, even as it was so different. But they've been amazing. They've been to my son's bris and they love having Shabbat and my kids get to go to their house every December and get Christmas. So like everybody's winning at this point.
Yeah. It's really nice when two parents have families that celebrate different holidays. You never really have to fight over it.
We don't have to split anything except for Thanksgiving. We alternate. That's the only one. But everything else, there's no competition. It's like everybody. I get to celebrate Christmas now after like a whole childhood of being like, man, it's not fair. It's pretty. It's a sweet deal. Yeah.
So okay, and then what was I was just going to ask you about. So this is the one thing about not having notes that does get, because I get so into the conversation. I was like, but I had a good question for you. So when you were growing up, you said you were going to temple all the time and like for different events and stuff, and you had Shabbat. And then what's the plan for your kids? You're going to plan obviously to have them go to, do the Shabbat every Friday night. Is that something that you guys?
I'd say we do it like 9 out of 10 Fridays and like sometimes there's some sort of extenuating circumstance, but generally we're doing it. And even if we can't do like a full on, we're going to light the candles and do the grape juice and do the challah.
I love that. And Jewish school, is that something you would consider?
They're both in day school already.
Isn't that the best? There's nothing like a cute Jewish preschool.
Oh, it's so cute. I love everything about it. I love where they're at. We love the community. We love the teachers. It's just great.
How are you dealing right now with everything going on with the hostages and all of that? It is so emotional.
Yeah.
It's so scary.
My podcast that drops on Tuesday, coming Tuesday.
Okay, wait, yeah. So your podcast comes out once a week?
Once a week on Tuesdays.
Okay, once a week on Tuesdays.
And my opening monologue on Tuesday is all about the emotions happening around this hostage situation and how
Mm.
complicated it is and how many different emotions we're all feeling all at once on so many different levels.
It's definitely been so this last weekend. I know that 3 more girls are going to be released this week. We're recording this on Wednesday, and 3 more girls are going to be released tomorrow.
Yep.
As of Saturday, the 4 girls got released. I
Mm-hmm.
was bawling. Like I was not okay watching them get returned to their moms. But it's like a sad, happy, weird
Yeah.
feeling.
Sad, happy, fearful. I mean, there's all these things. You're afraid. You're like, well, they're coming here. That means that like 700 murderers and prisoners from from Palestine are being released, and what's going to happen. You're wondering how are they going to end this cycle of violence now that this deal is sort of allowing Hamas to regroup. As happy as we are that these people are coming home, is this now sacrificing future lives? Now we're seeing Gazans return to the north. So what was all that fighting for? So many lives lost on both sides. Was that worth anything?
Mm-hmm.
It's just a lot going on. And then, of course, like the ecstatic joy and relief of seeing these people return home at the top, to me has been the most prominent emotion. I'm just so happy to see them return from that nightmare.
And I always think about Hirsch. Like I can't stop thinking about Hirsch's mom.
She's an amazing person.
Beyond. And it's just like, for some reason, every time I see one of the hostages hug their parents, I just think of her. It's like, I can't stop thinking of her.
Yeah.
And like just the lives lost from everywhere. Like it's just so tragic. So even through the happiness, we're sad. Like exactly. There's never full joy. There's no win.
No. There's there's a moment of bright light in relief. This like darkness. Yeah.
And I think about those little babies, like the Bibas family that I cannot get them out of my brain.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's happening there. And it's like, we're all waiting, right? And we're all like hoping, and it's scary. It's like, so it's just such a horrible time.
Yeah.
Horrible time. So what is like, how do you keep yourself sane and positive with all this bad news that just constantly comes to you?
Yeah, I'm kind of an optimistic person by nature. But
you're a Jew.
I don't know. I guess there are dozens of us.
How's your digestive tract?
I have a pretty iron stomach.
My God.
Yeah.
Are you sure you're Jewish?
I got good genes somehow. I don't know. Some mix up. I tend to be a pretty positive person. I guess in the sense of like, I don't really wait. It's also logical for me. Like I don't waste time and energy worrying about things because I know that has no effect on whether those things are going to happen or not. And when things do happen, I know that I'll deal with them, and that I'm confident in my ability to deal with things that life, brings at me. So rather than stress or worry or feel anxious about stuff, generally, for the most part, I'm of the mind of like, let's do the best we can do. And when the shit hits the fan, I will, be there with a towel to clean it up.
Yeah. It's kind of almost like an out of your control at times too. And what's the best thing that we can do is just, stay present.
And do what you can control, and I feel very satisfied in the way that I'm spending my time and energy, that I am trying to, control the things I can't control in a positive way. And, I'm not losing any sleep at night because I'm speaking out too much,
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that that's like your goal with your podcast being Jewish?
Mm-hmm.
For all of you guys that are listening to this, whether or not you are Jewish or not, you said you had Van Jones on your show. So you're not only talking to Jews.
I've added a lot of really awesome non-Jewish allies on the show, and I have a big non-Jewish audience. It's impossible to actually know statistically how many of them are, but anecdotally, I got a lot of regulars. I mean, people who follow me online and who listen to the show and reach out to me, people who I think, find allies, and people who are just, open-hearted people who want to understand this more and do recognize that what they're seeing out in the world is not the whole story, and that like their feed online is telling them all this one thing, and then they see me who's telling them this other thing, and they're like, I got to explore this other thing more. So yes, it is. That was like from the beginning. I was like, I'm having Jews and non-Jewish allies because this is for everyone.
I love that. So your mission with this podcast is really to just spread. What would you say? Like what is the one mission?
The one mission really is, if I had to distill it to one thing, is empowerment. I really want people to come away from the show feeling like they're not alone, and like they have not just the permission, but like the responsibility to be proud and loud with who they are, whether they're Jewish or not. It's important to be your full authentic self, and it feels good. And it's how, we create change. It's like I mentioned earlier on the show, like taking that Magen David necklace out. To me, that's the win. I want somebody to listen to my show and say, I'm going to wear my necklace out today. And, I've gotten a lot of responses that people are behaviorally changing based on the sort of confidence that the show gives them and the feeling of support and community, and that they're not alone.
One of the biggest days for me was when I put on my Instagram bio, which is my version of my wearing my Magen David, was putting like proud Jew on my Instagram bio. And like, that's my front of my door. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I get so many new followers every day, and like, I didn't want to have to scare them away later. It's like, let me weed you out now. If you want to follow me, I want you to know what you're following.
Exactly.
Because I was sick of getting the DMs every time I would post something like, wait, you're a Zionist? Like those kinds of DMs.
Totally.
So that's exactly what it is. It's like, let people know who you are and don't be scared of it. And if they don't like you for that, then like, that's their loss and goodbye. But you can't change, right?
Yeah. And I think that's part of why maybe I don't get as much like direct hate. I mean,
probably
I get some, but like, people know, like, you're coming to the wrong page. If you got an issue with Jews, you're like, you're not coming to my page. You're like, what? This guy is pro-Israel? Like, no, like.
Well, there's a lot of Jews that they say they're not. So like, maybe they would be confused. I don't know. It's a weird world out there these days.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I mean, I don't get it, but there's a strange subsect of weird things out there.
Some of the nastiest comments have come from like, Jews who are anti-Israel.
Oh no, I know. I see it all over places, like really strange, like self-loathing type of comments. And that's the kind of stuff that another thing that I think is, well, we can get into it at another time. I don't want to end it on a bad note.
Okay.
But, Jonah, you are actually like a very light energy, like you do, and that's not just because you're a light skinned, light haired, non-Jewish looking guy. No, I'm just joking. You don't look Jewish. How many people
what
tell
does that
you
even mean, to look Jewish?
How many people tell you that?
What, that I don't look Jewish?
People tell me that all the time. They're like, you're not Jewish, you don't look Jewish.
I've gotten that a few times in my day. I mean, did you watch the show Nobody Wants This?
Oh my God, that was something I was going to ask you.
Yeah, so
we were talking about Courtney.
Yeah, I love that show.
Thank you for bringing it back.
Oh my God, I love that show. And one of my favorite moments from the whole series is when Kristen Bell says that to Adam Brody, like, you don't look Jewish. And he's like, well, what does that mean? Like, what do Jews look like? And he's like ribbing her, which I loved. Like, he didn't take it so hard. And I love that, like, clearly that's a conversation that character has had before. And like,
totally.
That's what we talk about. That same thing too.
Totally. But by the way, Adam Brody does look Jewish.
He looks,
he looks more Jewish than us.
Eastern European Ashkenazi Jew he looks. But Jewish looks 100 million different ways.
100 million things. I'm more Eastern European though. Like I'm half Hungarian too. I have Hungarian and like Romanian also, and Israeli. I've got it all in me. But it's so funny that you're right. Like we do. Jews look like everything.
I had
Ethiopian Jews.
Yeah, I just had Jew with a coffee. I just had coffee with
what does that mean?
Right?
What does that mean to have Jew?
That's the new slang. I just had coffee with a Jewish woman who's Israeli, whose grandparents are from Tunisia.
Wow.
And like, she's as Jewish as I am, and we couldn't look more different.
Oh my God, there's Korean Jews.
We're everywhere.
Do you know that in South Korea, actually, because I went to South Korea for a layover a few years back, and
cool.
like we ran into a huge Jewish community. Like there is a crazy big community in South Korea.
That's awesome.
I know. I actually love that. So,
Oh
and
yeah,
they were like very pro-Israel this last year. I follow a Korean Jew online. Like it's the coolest.
that's so
But,
cool.
but yeah, it's a really, nobody wants this was a great watch for anyone out there that is Jewish, not Jewish. Like I loved that show.
I loved it. It was so charming, and just not to talk my pod some more, but I did an episode with Jackie Tone from that show,
She
who's
plays the best
hilarious.
friend,
She
right?
plays
Or like
the
the wife.
sister-in-law. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And
Oh, she's
and
great.
I gave like my full throated defense to like the haters who had come online of the show and like
Because
tried to.
people thought that the women were played like very nasty.
Yes, that was like the number one thing, and I just I was very irritated by those
You know what I thought
comments.
about that? Number one, I also saw that stuff and I was like, number one, lighten up everyone and
Totally.
laugh.
Yeah, it's a TV
Laugh.
comedy. This isn't a documentary.
Exactly. And number two, like, can we take some wins? This was
Yeah,
such an overall wonderful thing for Jews.
exactly right. Exactly
And
what I
then
said.
third, look at her parents. Her parents, Kristen Bell's parents, were like nutty too. And they
Yeah.
weren't Jewish. Like everyone was crazy on that show.
Right. They were all comedy TV characters,
It was such
like
a good show.
yeah, I thought it was great.
Oh my gosh. Well, okay. So Tuesdays, being Jewish with Jonah Platt. Also, where are you on Instagram?
At Jonah Platt, and then the podcast is at Being Jewish Podcast.
At Being Jewish Podcast, at Jonah Platt. And I heard that if you leave him some cash in his DMs, he sings Tevye for you in Hebrew, not Jewish. In Hebrew, he sings for you if you just drop him some cash, like Venmo or something.
And
That's what I heard.
If it's Bitcoin, I'll do Wicked. But if
Oh
it's
my gosh. Okay. So if it's Bitcoin, he'll do Wicked in Hebrew.
I'm gonna look it up. I'll be ready.
Okay. So dancing through life in Hebrew. Okay.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Rikud means dance, so I'm halfway there. Chaim is life.
L'chaim, Chaim. Yeah, I mean, we can work
Rikud
something out.
bechaim. It's probably like that.
Well, Jonah, it's such a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for being here. For real, honestly, such a pleasure and such a light during dark times.
I appreciate you saying that. This was a blast. Thank you for having me.